Hello crafters! Some of you will know that Diwali is around the corner, and I spotted an image in Design Space which got me inspired to design a Diwali card. I'm going to do this as a two-part video. In this video, I'm going to show you how I designed the card. I will share this project in this kind of finished form, but I just thought it might be useful for you guys to see how I got here, because there's loads of skills that you can learn along the way. In part 2, which I will publish next week, I'll show you how I made the card and put it all together. The image that I found, which was my starting point for this project, is this top layer of this earring, or you will see it in Design Space called a jhumka. This image here, if we go into images, and if I search jhumka, then you can see this is the image that I spotted and I thought would be a really cool place to start for a Diwali card, and something a bit different. I have shared other ideas on Diwali cards before, usually kind of using the lantern image, because I know that's an important part of celebrating Diwali. But I thought this might be something a little bit different. You know, you do also get dressed up on festive occasions, and this is quite a traditional shape of an earring that you might wear. I really love the idea of putting this together with my love of papercraft. It would just look so ornate, and it is the kind of thing that once it's made, I feel like you might even want to frame it and have it on display. I'm not planning on putting Happy Diwali on it anywhere, so it can just be like a nice decorative piece of artwork that you might hang up somewhere. And obviously I'm planning on using lovely gold glittery cardstocks to make this final project, so it will have a sort of sparkly, glamorous element to it. So where I normally start with a project like this is to decide if I am going to be using my larger pieces of cardstock and cutting the actual card itself on the Cricut machine, or using those pre-bought card blanks. And I've actually got loads of pre-bought card blanks in the craft room, and I'm trying to get through my backlog of supplies. So I've chosen to use one of my existing card blanks. So the first thing is to create a template, which is the same size of the card that I'll be using. But as I'll show you later on in the project, when I am working with certain details, I don't do them to scale to begin with. If we just grab a shape and grab the square, and then I find this a bit annoying now, actually. You have to click on shapes again to get that menu to disappear. Okay, so this design that I've shown you on the screen, the finished one, is not actually the correct size. It's a little bit bigger. Obviously, you know, you can just scale things down. But as we recreate the design, let's stick to the correct size. So the size of my card is 14.5 centimeters by 14.5. So I'm going to type that in. And because I've got the lock icon on, it has readjusted the size of the square along the height and the width automatically. And then I do like to adjust the color so that it kind of matches the actual card blank that I'll be using. It also helps when you're designing to get an idea of what the finished thing will look like if you work in all the same colors. So I might even adjust this color under the advanced tab to be even a slightly paler color, because it's not really as yellow as this is showing it to be. My initial idea was just to create these earrings and have, you know, multiple layers to them, and use foam blocks to add kind of depth between the layers when I glue it all together. But I decided I actually wanted to add some interest to the card beyond just these earrings, and so I wanted to put a pattern onto the background. Now, you could either do this part using foil or a pen. To be honest, it's just easier to use a pen, and so that's the way that I'm going to do it. But if you have the extra time and you want to use the foil, and if you are thinking this is something you might want to keep long term, or whoever you're gifting it to might keep long term, try the foil. Now, when I was thinking about what I could use as a background pattern, I was sort of thinking along the lines of the traditional patterns that you get when you do mehndi. So I actually just went straight in and searched for the term mehndi. Actually, the cool thing is that there are loads of options. I think I've mentioned this before. Now that we have contributing artists in Design Space, there's kind of no search term that doesn't give you a decent set of results. What I have discovered, however, is that this particular shape, which is commonly used when, you know, doing mehndi patterns, has its own search term that will give me more options, which is paisley. So I am going to search that instead. And then what I did try and do is to put a filter on for draw, because like I said, I'm going to be using pen and you might want to use foil. So starting by searching the images that are specifically designed to be used with a pen is a good idea. But as you can see, there aren't that many here that, you know, are particularly nice. So in the end, I decided to get rid of that filter. And if we just click on advanced search, we can see all the images more clearly. And another feature of this images search that I'm really liking at the moment is if I do find an image that I like the look of, this for example, bearing in mind I'm thinking about how this might look when I turn it into a draw only image. What I can do is select the image, and then underneath you get loads more options that are just in a similar design. That process you can just repeat. So I quite like this one and maybe this one. So if I click on one of these, and then again, I'll get more underneath that. If I'm not entirely convinced by the one I've chosen, then there's a whole bunch of options underneath. Now, the one that I have actually chosen to use in the end is under my bookmarked images. So I will just pick it out from here, and it's this one here. So clicking on it has added it to my canvas. And again, you have to click on images in the left-hand menu to get rid of that pop-up menu again. So let's bring this over to the new card that we're designing. And as I mentioned, we are not going to be cutting and sticking anything. We're going to be getting our machine to draw this design. So I'm going to change the operation to a pen. And I might actually now change the color. And I'm thinking I want to have not just metallic tones, but I want to bring in, you know, like an accent color. And I'm quite liking the look of this sort of like turquoisey green color. Yeah, maybe the actual turquoise. You can see in my layers here for the final earring, I'm going to have a green layer. It's a color that I don't normally work with, so I'm quite excited to see how it will turn out. Now, what I want to do is turn this into a pattern that repeats across this square. So let's zoom in a bit, give ourselves some more space. And, oh, I'm just going to move this slightly so that we're not distracted. Zoom out just slightly. So what I'm going to first do is resize this first image to kind of this approximate size that I think I would want. And then I'm going to hit Command C and V to get some duplicates, to get some copies of it. And I think I'm going to do 5. Now, what I'll do just to make life easy is for a second, I'm going to select my square and hide it. Then I will click and drag over all of these, and I'm going to align center. And then I'm going to distribute horizontally. So you can see they're now all nicely evenly distributed, and we can bring the square back in. Well, we can think about exactly how we want to align the pattern on the card later. I think given the kind of curve of this image, what I'd like to do is to have the next set of images interlocking. So if I show you what I mean, I'm going to copy and paste, and then what I want to do is actually flip this on the horizontal. So if I show you, let's bring everything down a bit. I want them to sort of slot between each other, something like this. Maybe actually I want to flip it like that. Yeah, that's more like it. So they kind of are creating a sort of a wave shape between them. So let's bring this in between here. And again, I'm going to just copy and paste to get enough to fill the card blank. In fact, actually, I've just thought of a better way of doing this. Sorry, I'm going to delete all of these. And instead of recreating, I'm going to select these ones, copy and paste all of these, because these have already been aligned and distributed. So when I now flip and flip again, then I know that the alignment is already quite, it's perfect. So that's definitely the quicker way of doing it. Let's create a couple of rows now. And probably just need the one more. And we'll bring back the square blank in a second and check. Oh, it's not the right one. The only thing about a copy and paste when it's individual items like this is you have to kind of pick it up straight away, or you'll have to do each one by one, because I haven't grouped or attached any of these just yet. Okay, so our layers panel is looking quite busy right now. That's okay, we don't mind that. Let's unite all of these. So I'm not going to group them because in a minute I'm going to need them to be a single layer. So if I group them, they won't be. What we'll do is a unite. I have done a video on these features in Design Space previously. Weld is one that we've had in Design Space for a long time, and the ones below are newer ones. And to be honest, I'm not sure why Weld has, been maintained, because it does the same thing as Unite, and actually it's not as powerful as the Unite function, because you can't undo when you've welded something, whereas Unite, whether you've saved and exited the project and come back on another day, you can still undo it, but you can't do that with Weld. So I'm going to hit Unite, and now you can see our layers panel is a bit cleaner because there's not loads and loads of paisleys. They're just one layer on their own. And now we can bring back our square. And the reason I wanted to do that is so I can easily now start moving this design around and see where exactly I want it placed on my cardstock. Yeah, so I'm just going to play around with the alignment until I'm kind of happy with how it's looking. And if we zoom out a bit, it also gives you another view of how your design is progressing. I'm quite happy with this. So what I'm going to do is, this is something I always do when I'm in the middle of a design. Obviously, I know where I'm headed because I've done this before. But when you are working on a new project and you're not sure what you might want to do with your final design, before you make a big change, which like I'm about to do, and I'll show you what that is in a second, always just create a quick copy and then shove it somewhere off on the side, just in case you change your mind about what you're going to do. So what we are going to do is, and this is something to remember, I always forget this step. First, I'm going to make a copy of my blank card square. And then I'm going to select my 2 layers, and I'm actually going to do a slice. Okay. So now we need to just get rid of the layers we don't need. So this one can go, that one. So we want to keep this one, and we don't need this or this. Well, there's so many squares here. What's going on? Oh, I think maybe earlier on when I was copying pasting things, the square was also getting pasted. But that's okay. So now I'm going to select the 2 layers. If I zoom in a bit, you can see I just did a click and drag, align and center. That is looking very cool. So if I just select this and I change it to foil, I'll just give you an idea of how it might look if you did choose to foil this design. And if you did that, you might want your card to be more like this sort of a color. Maybe if we make this bold, you can see it more clearly. Oh, that looks so good. I love that. Well, I'm working with a cream blank, and I'm not going to be using the foiling tool, but if you are able to go down this route, you can see it would look really quite fabulous. Anyway, let's go back to where we were. So just make sure it's still centered. And then now I'm going to attach them, because when we make this, we want the pen to draw directly on top of this square. Okay, so that is the background layer done. Now let me show you how I created this decorative element. Why don't we just grab this top layer? This is the image you'll get when you search in Design Space for earring or Indian jewelry or jhumka. I think I spoke to you earlier about how here we've designed to scale our card. This is the exact size of the card, so that's why I've created the square to be the same size. But here I'm going to be using the offset tool to create these additional layers. And what I've seen is that when you work with offset, you are better off making your image much bigger than you actually need it to be, because then you can get the offset tool to work a bit better. I'm going to bring this all the way down here, and I'm just going to, really go wild, make it nice and big. Now, the reason the offset tool will work better is because it's got like an absolute amount by which it will offset in terms of a distance. So when your design you've resized your design to be larger, a smaller offset will be like a smaller percentage of the distances involved in your bigger design. And so you get like a more precise offset. 0.1 is probably too small. Yeah, that looks good. So let me actually show you what this might look like if we didn't do the... If it wasn't as big, just so you can see what I'm talking about. So if we zoom in now, so you can see I've made that much smaller. Let's do the offset again. And I'm sticking to the 0.2 and hit apply. So hopefully you can see here, if we zoom out a bit, bring this closer, compare the two, because the initial image was smaller, and a 0.2 offset has meant that all these little intricate cutouts in the earring have been lost in the offset, and I don't want that to happen quite so quickly. I want to keep some of these gaps in the individual layers. So you can see that's the advantage, because I'm obviously going to resize this earring back down to be the right size to fit on here. But while I'm doing the offset, it's quite a good idea to, work out of scale. I have actually made a physical copy of this card already. So one of the things that I have learnt from that is that this top layer of the card is quite intricate and not so easy to get a clean cut. It's not such a problem for the offset layer because you've already made the design a bit larger. Obviously, these sections in here might be a bit tricky. You may not get a completely clean cut on all of these. What I'm going to do now is on the next couple of offset layers, I'm going to increase the size of the offset. So if we center these again. Oh, no, I don't mean to do that. I meant to align and center. And while we're going, I will change the colors to be the color scheme that I had initially been thinking about. So there's that turquoisey green color that I had mentioned. Now let's select that layer. Each time we do an offset, you should use the last offset you created, not the original design. So we're ready for an offset. And I said I wanted to be a bit bigger. So let's see how 0.3 looks. Because if I go back to a 0.2 and hit apply, actually, you can see it's still cutting out these small sections. But I know from the size that my card is going to be, in the third layer, these are just going to be the most tiniest little holes that are just not going to cut, most likely will tear. So I don't need them to be so small. Also, on this scale, when we do make it the correct size, I just feel like it's not enough of a offset border between the layers. It's okay for the top and the immediate layer below that, but for the lower down layers, I want there to be more visible. Select the lower layer again. You can always check you've got the right layer by just doing a quick clicking the I button to hide it. So I know I'm on the correct layer. So I'll select it again, zoom out a bit so I can see my full earring, and do an offset maybe of 0.3 this time. What I'm looking to see is when most of these little holes disappear. Let's see, is 0.4 going to look too big? I think maybe now that is too big of a jump. So let's go back to 0.3, hit apply. And let's change the color. I think I was going to go with like a glittery red for this layer. And then let's offset that once more. Hit apply. And that's going to be a sort of darker red color. One thing we may want to do is for the lower layers, these two, is to contour out some of these very small areas that are going to be cut, because like I said, they're unlikely to have a successful cut. So sorry, let me just show you what I did. I clicked on the layer I want to adjust, clicked on contour, and this is a way of getting rid of these very small very small parts of your design. Although the tool can sometimes be a bit glitchy. Let's come out and try again. Contour. Okay, so if I try and hover over them, sometimes you can see it's sort of, it can be a bit tricky. I'm trying to zoom in, but when I zoom in, it is getting upset with me for doing that and is not working. That's Design Space. I'm sure you guys have all been here as well. Right, actually, I'll get rid of this. And now maybe it'll be easier to select these. Yep. Sometimes with Design Space, you just have to have a good level of patience. Almost there. Yes, okay. I'll turn this one back on. So I think I'm happy with these small circles. But once we resize this down to the correct size, we'll have another think. And this layer looks fine. So if we get them all sort of back on top of each other and align in center. Another thing that is a good reminder whenever you're working on a project is just to remember to hit save frequently, because you never know when Design Space is going to glitch out. Right, let's group all of this together and then resize it. In my attempt at making this project, I did also discover, especially for this top layer, you really can't go very small at all. So I think I was around here in my initial design and it just would not cut. So I would recommend as big as you can with it whilst it still looks good in your design. What I want to do is create a copy of this earring to be like the matching pair, and I'm rotating it because I want to rotate in the final design, but let me show you the two earrings together first. So I'm going to do Control C, Control V, and then we need to flip it so it's like the mirror image earring. Maybe we need to make them smaller. So if you want to do that, you have to select both earrings so they resize together, so they're still the same size. You don't want one to end up being bigger or smaller. Now what I want to is I want them just to look like someone's kind of getting ready for Diwali. They've chosen these earrings and they've just sort of left them out and they're ready to go. So they're not like perfectly next to each other, but sort of, just kind of carelessly, casually thrown on the dressing table. That's my idea. I don't know if that's what's coming across. A little bit smaller, I think, so it fits nicely on the card. And there we go. So this is my final design. It is ready to go to be made. My plan is that I'm going to cut all these individual layers and assemble the whole project. And then what I'll have is this single 14 by 14 centimeter, card with the design on it. And I'm going to stick that onto the card blank that I've got, because I didn't want to take the risk of putting my card blank onto the mat and having the machine draw this paisley pattern and maybe be slightly off center. I quite like it when a design goes all the way to the edge, and I just didn't want to risk that kind of going wrong on the actual card blank. So a nice way to get around that is to just use any nice cream white colored card that you've got and just attach that to your card blank. So long as you've measured correctly, then it will fit perfectly on top and no one will probably even be able to tell that's what you did. Okay, join me next week to see exactly how I made this card come to life. In the meantime, check out this playlist of my other Cricut Maker projects. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, happy crafting!